Welcome to Healers with Humor.
Where healing meets heart and a whole lot of vulnerability.
We're your hosts, Candice and Shelly, two healers navigating life, love, and all the messy moments in between.
Because we believe that healing isn't just about crystals and meditation. It's about embracing the chaos, learning from the challenges, and finding joy in the journey.
Each week, we'll share real stories, insightful conversations, and maybe even a few awkward truths just to help you navigate your own healing path.
And guess what? This season, we're bringing in special guests to share their wisdom and inspire even more connection.
So grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, or just settle right in and get ready for laughs, lessons, and a whole lot of light. This is Healers with Humor. Welcome back, Bright Lights, to Healers with Humor, Season 2, Episode 8, The Power of Intuition in Everyday Life. I'm Candice.
And I'm Shelly.
Hey, Shelly. So we just tried to start this episode 4 times before we got it right. So if we had a bloopers reel, it would be on there, but we don't. So I'm excited about this conversation because it's something that we both do every single day. And so I do have a candle, of course, Lindsay at So Love. This candle is Trust. And that is probably the biggest thing, right? As we talk about intuition, is trusting, right? That information when it's coming in. So trust is when we align with our heart-centered state of awareness. Trust, we find ourselves feeling safe and secure in the world. We trust that no matter what is happening around us, all is happening as it should be. We trust that the universe is providing all that we need in this very moment. When we trust, we let go of worry, fear, and doubt, and we know just how supported and loved we are truly. So I think that's a beautiful message for this episode. And then the card for the episode is from the 22 Archangels Oracle, which is Kyle Gray. And Archangel Azrael came out today. And that card was about transcendence. And intuitively, I took from the book some information. I'm not going to read everything that it says, but the pieces that really are poignant for today are the message around you. You are going through some changes right now, and you may not be enjoying them. But please be assured that you are being led to your highest good. Change is a natural process, and we are constantly moving through different levels of development and experience so we can grow. Trust literally says that in the description. Trust in yourself and your higher power. Not everything on your journey has been favorable, but you wouldn't be who you are today without the lessons you have learned. How many times have we said that to each other?
Yeah, and I'm laughing over here because the alignment of I have several malas that are charged with a mantra, and I just updated my altar yesterday. And as you were reading the trust card, I was like, I'm sorry, does she know what I was doing yesterday? It's literally the mala that's like trust that what's happening is, essentially for you and working toward your highest good. And so I had a little giggle there too, because to your point, right? Trusting intuition is challenging, but also trusting, as you're on your journey, trying, working toward your path and purpose is also challenging at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, as we jump into today's episode, which I'm excited about as well on intuition, because I think we're just diving deeper into intuition and how you can use it more. So, Candice, tell me how you use intuition.
So from an everyday life standpoint, I use it for lots of different things. I feel like we've talked about some of these before. But some of the little things, right? Deciding what I'm going to eat. All right. Sometimes I'll plan one thing and just wake up knowing, no, that's not what I want today. Vacation planning. So instead of going into the scroll hole, right, being really intentional about, feeling into where is it that I want to go? What is it that I'm trying to achieve on this, vacation or trip? What places feel aligned? Am I going to be able to rest there? Will I have, is this an inspirational trip? Those types of things. Um, and then there's also just that everyday intuition of, eek, I know I told you that we were going to go to the movies on Saturday, and I just woke up and I feel terrible, or I didn't sleep well the night before, or hey, you know what? I'm just not feeling up for it. And that's the intuition about just listening to my body. So, maybe canceling some plans. And if you're friends with me, you'll know what that feels like. And then again, kind of everyday life. Just a couple weeks ago, we were chatting, as we were getting ready for the episode. We're all both always doing work on ourselves. And I had done some pretty deep energy work, and I knew that there were a couple of next steps. And I was guided intuitively to what these next steps were, but I had to choose dates for them. And I was like, well, if it were up to me, I would do it tomorrow. But I really had to intuitively think about when my body was going to be ready for the next step, and then choose those dates. And inadvertently, I chose to do one of the next steps without realizing it, on the next eclipse. And so
I love that.
obviously, my higher self knew that that was going to be a potent date, and a potent time to work on what I need to work on. And so, yeah, I would not have chosen that date, um, if my logical brain were in the mix. So, yeah,
Well,
those are just a couple of the ways I know, you use your intuition every day, for lots of things as well. What are some of the things that I didn't mention that you use yours for?
yeah, so certainly when I think about intuition, like kinda taking it back one step first, I think of it like a gift, right?
Oh, for sure.
Or, so we've talked about gifts, and I do think that your intuition is a gift that you're born with. It can also be thought of as a tool, but right, it's how we process the world around us and sort of the information that we have available. To your point, picking a what might be the best day for your body to do a session. And so, I started by asking myself, like, why wouldn't I use this gift or tool that my body naturally has, right? And
Mhm.
we came to a similar place in talking about chakras as well. So I
Mhm.
love that you talked about the important things. Vacation, what I should eat, safety, right?
Mhm.
Listening to the body, which we've talked about in quite a few episodes, right? And then how you tie that into healing.
Mm.
Because I think to your point, right, all of those things, I generally think about activities and classes that I want to go to.
Mhm.
There are lots of things that sound interesting to me, and you can't do them all, or some of them are on the same day.
Yeah.
So I do take intuition into consideration to say, which one would be the best one for me, not necessarily knowing what I might need
Mhm.
in that moment
Yeah.
or when I need something. And I do think, a big piece of the healing journey is sort of going from one breadcrumb to the next one. So
Mm.
using that intuition to say when to who,
Yeah.
who should help me if someone should help me, or is this something that I can do um, using my own talents, right?
Mhm.
So, using it as we sort of breadcrumb along. I don't know if that makes us Hansel and Gretel or if we're collecting breadcrumbs for something in particular, right? But as we're trying to get to the next step,
Mhm.
intuition is extremely helpful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, why is it important for us to be tapped into our intuition? Why should we all be tapped into our intuition?
Well, I mean, I think about it just because it's available to you.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I definitely think that you have it. It seems sort of silly not to use it, right? And I know as we get into this discussion, we're definitely we're gonna talk about how we lose that, right? So
Mhm.
much of what we're born with. We've talked in other episodes about, what children um understand about chakras and things like that. But then we lose a lot of that. And so how we recover that.
Mhm. Yeah. And is there a difference between intuition and that gut instinct?
I'll be interesting to see if you have anything to add to it, but I don't think they are. I think they're the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I think what's different is using your gifts, and by that I mean particularly the clairs, right? Whether you
Mhm.
hear it, see it, know it, feel it. And for those that have to taste it, I'm sorry. But I
Or
think
smell
about,
it.
yeah, I think that how you perceive the information certainly comes in different ways. I do think it comes in different parts of your body. So one of the particular ways that I think that helps people distinct or understand better where it comes into something like human design,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
there are some people that are like, it's a hard yes, right? Or
Mhm.
they feel it in a certain place in their body.
Yep.
So I think what's, I'll just say, kind of misguiding, right, is that it's always in your gut.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
wherever it is that you feel it in your body, right, whether you hear it, see it, just know, I do think, right, it's the same, it's coming from the same place, that
Mhm.
same resource.
Yeah. Yep, no, I totally agree. I was going to mention human design if you didn't, um, because that is one of the things that when I learned what my response was, right, through a human design perspective, um, and how I feel a yes in my body or a no in my body, that was definitely helpful, to kind of, put those things together, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, I love that. So thinking about intuition and the inner guidance, I mentioned earlier that a lot of us need to recover it.
Mhm.
Why has it been something that we needed to recover?
Yeah. So, I put a lot of thought into this question because it's definitely something that has been really part of my journey. And we talked about trust as the candle, right, for the episode. And my belief, my own journey, has been because we were never taught to trust it,
Oh,
right? We're taught to override it. We are I'll give the example of, when we're little kids and we go to the mall to see the mall Santa. And, the 3-year-old or the 4-year-old is just like wailing because this scary man with a beard and a red suit wants me to sit on his lap, right? Like that just goes against everything my whole body wants or doesn't want. And our parents are like, no, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's just Santa. Our bodies are having a physical reaction to the fact that I don't want to sit on the scary man's lap. But our parents are like, "Oh, how cute," right? So we're taught to override that natural instinct to trust, right? What is good for us. And so we're conditioned to prioritize logic and external validation and what other people have told us was right, right? That's how I've lived my
mhm,
whole life. Everybody knew more about me than I knew about me. And I trusted that. So, it gets we lose it through a lot of different ways. We lose it through our family or, family of origin at home. Again, not trusting what's coming through for us at school. We could have some religion things or even just societal norms. We've learned that our inner knowing wasn't enough. Have you ever been told, "Don't be so sensitive. Don't make a big deal out of it." Right? Be polite, even when it's uncomfortable. Go give Aunt Sue a hug, even when
I
you don't
was
want
just
to.
thinking that.
Even when you don't want to, right? Do what's expected of you, those societal norms. And so when we've been programmed to not trust these instincts that we have, we get disconnected from them. And that's one thing about this, this inner guidance is we've learned not to own it, not to own our own. And so as adults, and especially as an empath or highly sensitive person, right, we're trying to unlearn all of that. We're trying to recover our connection to ourselves, to our bodies, to our energy, to that quiet, wise voice. When we think about when we first start listening to our intuition, it's usually that really uh, soft voice at the very beginning of your thought process or when you're questioning something that comes in. It's not the really loud voice that's like, "Why you're so stupid. You shouldn't be doing that." Right? That's our ego. That's our ego trying to keep us safe, right? And not change. It's usually that very like first whisper of information. And sometimes we aren't paying close enough attention, to that, but yeah, it's the wise voice that didn't leave us, it just got buried, right, under some fear and some
Oh,
noise. But that's the beautiful thing is that it's not really lost, it's never really lost, it's always been there. It's just waiting for us to come home to it.
oh, yeah, I love that, and I thank you for hitting all the what I would have said are the high notes on that, hug this person, be nice to this person, there's no logical reason to avoid this person, or do
Mhm.
X, Y, and Z because you're told to, even though your body is saying no.
Yeah.
So that was great. Well, why do people consider it woo-woo? Intuition and woo-woo to me, a lot of people put them together, and that one's
Mhm.
interesting too.
Yeah. And we talked little bit about this in a previous episode around chakras. It's invisible. It's not tangible. You can't see it, right? You can't measure it. You're in the science field, right? You can't measure it in a lab,
Uh-huh.
right? You can't prove it on paper, right? It doesn't follow the formula, the logic, and so it makes people uncomfortable, especially in our society where we are rewarded for our logic and our productivity
Oh.
and our evidence-based everything, right? Trusting and feeling those inner nudges sound flaky. So right?
Oh.
"Well, my inner guidance is telling me not to do this." And your boss is like, "Well, my guidance is telling you that you need to do this."
But, I love what you just said, right? It's looked at really connecting that woo-woo for
Mhm,
a lot of people equals flaky, not
mhm,
logical,
yeah,
no evidence.
mhm,
Oh.
yeah. So, you add in terminology like energy, downloads, spirit guides, right? People are, like, giving you the side eye, like, Is she real? What is she talking about over there?"
Oh.
Um, but again, just because it's not tangible doesn't mean it's not real. You and I are both, um, interestingly, we both come from very logical backgrounds, right? You have a very scientific background. You have a very, that's your job now, along with all of the energy work. I lived a very logical life. I was, in a very logical field and, never met a spreadsheet I didn't like. So it's, yeah, just because it's not tangible doesn't mean it's not real. And, we all have those stories of just, that just knowing, right? About a person, a place, or a situation.
Mhm.
And learning to trust those things. I will also say, I had a session with a client recently who has, she fully believes in intuition. She has a really hard time trusting her own decisions. And the guidance that I received, right, from my guides was she needs to start journaling the decisions that she's making and why she's making them. And it doesn't mean that any of them are gonna be right, wrong, or indifferent, but she needs to start understanding where the guidance is or what she's trusting to make these decisions. And so it just came up in the last couple of weeks. So it's gonna be interesting to see how she progresses through that, like, "Oh, I made this decision based on these set of criteria." Right? And as she goes through her journey, what is she gonna see? What is she gonna kinda pull out from the journaling around, "Oh, when I make this decision, right, from this place, these things happen. When I don't, those things happen." That'll be
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, that will be.
But at the end of the day, intuition is ancient, right? It's primal. It's how we've survived. It's how our ancestors survived, right? Long before spreadsheets and Google came along.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. If you think about it, right? Today we have so much more information, and to your point, I can't tell if that's a help or a hindrance
Mhm.
because if you couldn't Google before, right, you had to make some of those decisions based on what feels right in your body.
Right.
And as we've gotten further and further away from that because we've gotten more information, now we feel like we need to know all the information before we make a decision.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you can get into that, analysis paralysis, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, it's really again, it's coming back to ourselves. It was never lost. It was just, buried under some programming.
Well, let's talk about intuition, and I want to talk about it a couple different ways. I want to talk about first. how everyone can and should use it, and I'll
Mhm.
call that your basic intuition
Yeah.
user.
Yep.
Um, let's talk about what everyone should be doing.
Mhm.
If I think about it myself, I think that everyone needs to be connected to their own body, and I think we both agree with that.
Yes.
I think that building the trust with yourself and listening to your own body, particularly when they're presenting something, right? In other episodes, we've talked about how pain has presented to you. I've
Mhm.
talked about my throat chakra. And again, using this is just using your resources, and it builds a good relationship with yourself, right?
Yeah.
It forces you to try to begin to trust yourself more.
Mhm.
But for me, I also think it gives your body, mind, and spirit more peace and joy opportunities,
Yeah.
right? I'm not sitting there wondering, am I making the right decision? I know that I've looked at the logical piece, I've looked at the intuitive piece, and I've selected what decision I'm gonna make.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. So what would you add to that list?
I don't a lot of the same, quite honestly, right? But it's starting small, right? And it's not making these huge life decisions, right? The first time he's trying to tap into your intuition, but yeah, just making those decisions from that aligned place takes the pressure off. And it frees up a lot of energy and you get energy to do other things. But yeah, I would say a lot of the same things. I don't think I have anything terribly different.
Okay. Well, what would you, if I said, how could it be used to live a life with intuition? What would you
Mhm.
add to that?
Um, so living a life with intuition is again making those decisions from that aligned place. It's letting your inner knowing know that it has just an equal footing as the logic.
I like
Um,
that.
mhm. And it's been a hard one for me, but learning to pause before reacting.
Oh,
So, that primal instinct, sometimes takes over and you just want to, respond or react to something. And I'll give you another, kind of life example. In the moment when somebody asks me if I want to do something, my first instinct as a people pleaser is always like, oh, yes, of course. I would love to go to drinks on Thursday night. And then Tuesday rolls around and I'm like, do I really want to go to drinks Thursday night? I don't know. And so it gives me the opportunity to say, "You know what? Let me think about that and I'll get back to you." Instead of just being like, "Yeah, of course I do."
oh.
Yeah.
I love that because then you're listening to your body, you're listening to your intuition, but you're also
Mhm.
choosing yourself in that moment.
Yeah. Yep. And, maybe I do, maybe I don't. I'll find out on Tuesday. What about you? What are some of
Yeah.
those?
I think we talked about a lot of things that brought magic into life in
Mhm.
season 1, episode 10, and that was one of the first things that comes to mind. Because if only for the strict purpose of bringing more magic into your life or your everyday grind, why
Mhm.
not?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Um, you know, I mentioned I think it's easier to make decisions, right? Because I know that I have more than just logic and I'll just say the learning or education or Googling I
Mhm.
can do, right? There's this
Yeah.
there's this mystery factor that I can take into consideration as well. And I'll call it the everything I don't know, but information that's available to me, right?
Mhm.
And the other another piece is it's just fun.
Yeah.
Like for me, going back to where you talked about vacation, it's just in general, I have a free Saturday. Where do I wanna go? What I wanna do? What I wanna eat?
Mhm.
Picking out a new book or crystal. It's just making it fun, exciting, kinda spontaneous, but safe spontaneous. Like a little adventure, right? A lot of
Mhm.
times, I love going to shop for antiques, and I just say, "Which one should I go to? Where is there something for me?"
Mhm.
And I have come home with some of the most wild,
Nice.
absurd things that I absolutely love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know when I see it that that's the weird thing that's for me today.
Mhm.
Um, on a more serious note, I think when it comes to healing, I just think it can be extremely helpful. I've talked about those breadcrumbs, right? So what to work on next or or who to work with,
Yeah.
understanding whose energy might be more aligned with your own or who might have the gifts without knowing what their gifts are.
Mhm.
That their gifts are what you need in that moment. And just honestly, going back to the body, thinking about where the body is calling for healing. I
Yeah.
don't always want my body to show me in pains as someone who has limped for a month
Yeah.
to learn to be more in my feminine or coughed through different periods of the last 2 years, right? To
Mhm.
understand, to use my voice to ask for what I want and need or become more comfortable utilizing my voice.
Yeah.
I'd prefer using intuition to say, okay, where in my body is energy not flowing the way that it needs to be? Or where do I need to, put some TLC into?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like too, when you live your life guided by intuition, right? And it's not we're not saying that every decision you make, do I take a right here? Do I take a left here? Um, every decision is not something that we're using intuition for. It might be, but it's not always. But some of the things that you benefit from, right, in living a life guided by intuition is again, you get to say no to things that no longer serve you, even if they make sense,
Oh.
right? So
Say that again. Say
l-
that again.
logically, say those for those of you in the back. Logically, this thing makes sense for me, but yet it does not serve my highest good anymore. And I get to say no. I get to make that decision. You get to fall like you talked about those, magic. You get to follow those nudges that lead to those magical moments that you never could have planned yourself, right?
Oh.
Um, and then the biggest for me, and it goes back to what we talked about, right, is that trust factor. You stop outsourcing your truth to people outside of you and
Mhm.
start trusting yourself. Because it's, and again, for the people in the back, it's not about being perfect. It's about being present.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that what the part that you said about outsourcing, right? So
Mhm.
much of what we've been taught to do is to get answers from the outside.
Mhm.
And going back to getting really comfortable with getting them from the inside is learning to trust ourselves again.
Yeah.
Um, because if you look back, if I look back at a lot of decisions that I made, right, they weren't always best for me. It's
Yes.
why I don't have the greatest relationship with myself and trusting myself, right?
Mhm.
That's been a big part of my healing journey. But if I can
Yes.
get to the place where I do what is safe and good and healthy and best for me,
Mhm.
um, then I can trust myself as I move forward in
Yeah.
making decisions that make my body feel good, right?
Yes.
That I don't regret,
Mhm.
or that I really just understand much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the both of us have made a lot of decisions through life to make other people feel more comfortable.
Oh,
And, as intuition was, kind of stripped away by the programming, by society, when we start coming back to making these decisions that are for our highest, best, and good, it's not always comfortable,
well,
right?
it definitely isn't mostly not comfortable.
Yeah, right. And that's what the guidance was from the book at the very beginning, right? You know,
Mhm.
the path isn't always what you expect it to be. It's not always going to feel comfortable, but at the end of the day, it is what's for your highest and best. I've made decisions over the last couple of years about who is in my life and who isn't. And none of that was easy. It took years for me to make those decisions. It took
Mhm.
years for me to be able to put myself first. Um, and in the moment, it's scary and there's a lot of
Oh.
fear. I can feel my throat chakra closing as we're talking about it, right? But I can tell you that my nervous system is so much better than it was 2 years ago, or even a year ago. And those are decisions that every time I think about, did I make the right decision? I go back to trusting my inner guidance. I had to make that decision for me. And if other people are upset about that, I can't control that. I've as long as I'm making my decisions, even intuitively or logically, with love and compassion, and I'm communicating them with love and compassion, that's all I'm responsible for.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, intuition is a big piece, and coming back to it um, is something that we've both had to do. And I think a lot of people um, are learning to do that now, right? As we have a lot more people coming to, awakening and their own spiritual and healing journeys.
Mhm. Which is amazing. I think that and it starts at all different ages, but you can certainly see it as people have lived a good portion of their lives, right? They start to process, um, and come back to that.
Yeah. And my hope is that as a generation of people are coming back online, um, that they are teaching their kids, right, our future generations, to not squelch that inner knowing, right? So I'm hopeful that it's not going to people aren't going to have the same road that we had, right? So that it's not going to be as hard for them to come back to it if it got, a little off course. My hope, my ultimate hope is that it never gets off course and that people they start teaching this in school, right?
Oh,
I mean, how amazing would that be? To start, allowing people even in school, right? I mean, I remember being in the, elementary school and being like, I need to use the restroom.
oh,
And
that's a great example.
right? The teacher's like, "It's not time yet." I'm like, "But my bladder's not telling my bladder's not telling me that." Um, so yeah, my hope is that as a society, we become more, open to people understanding themselves and doing what's best for them.
I love that. Do you know that's one of my favorite things of being an adult? And right, is because as a kid, you never could go to the restroom if you needed. As
Mhm.
an adult, it's very acceptable to say, "I need to use the restroom."
Yeah.
But that's an interesting lesson that we're taught.
Mhm. Yeah. There's certain
Mm.
times that we get to use the restroom throughout the day. Wow.
I would never make it as a child
Never.
again.
Not anymore. No.
Mm.
Oh, well, anything else to add to this episode or any other information for our bright lights?
No, what I just wanna say is that I've noticed that as we're working on, expanding within this season, right? And I look at, talking about chakras, talking about intuition, and we have another episode coming up in the future on the path and the purpose,
Mhm.
right? So much of it is really tapping into, again, listening to your body, right?
Yeah.
Getting in touch with yourself. And it's just kind of really lovely to see as we talk about, is this woo woo? Why is
Yeah.
this uncomfortable for people? And to really dig into, understanding why it's uncomfortable for people,
Yeah.
right?
Hopefully we're
And then
breaking down
sorta
some barriers for people.
yeah, I hope so.
Absolutely. Well, all right, bright lights. A wonderful episode again. We hope you enjoyed our conversation. Always leave comments. Um, let us know what you want to hear about. So, we did our first episode this season based on guidance from someone that wanted to know how we used our pendulums. And so, yeah, let us know what you want to hear about. We might be able to add something to the docket for you. All right, till next time. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Healers with Humor.
We hope that you found some laughs, a little light, and maybe even a few aha moments along the way today.
Remember, healing's a journey, not a destination, and you don't have to go it alone.
If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who could use a little healing and humor in their life.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review, and follow us on YouTube and any social media to stay connected with us.
Because we're definitely going to be sharing more wisdom, more laughs, and probably a little more oversharing next time.
Oh, you know it. Until then, take care of yourself, embrace the journey, and don't forget to laugh a little along the way.
All right, so see you next time on Healers with Humor.